All right, well, let me ask you about the 3 days of darkness. This is something that many Catholics, you see it it's part of the Catholic discourse. I do not know, just because I don't know if it's part of Protestant discourse, but it's not at all. Okay.
Totally not.
So which part of the Bible is this in?
None of them.
Okay. So tell me about the 3 days.
The 3 days of darkness are not predicted in the Bible anywhere. Now, if you go on some websites for 3 days of darkness supporters, they will appeal to passages like Exodus, where you have the 10 plagues against Egypt, and one of them is a plague of darkness, or they'll mention that in the book of Revelation there's a plague of darkness at one point, but none of these, Exodus, that's all in our past.
Yeah.
That is not a prophecy of the future. And so it provides zero support, evidentially, and it doesn't indicate, 3 days anyway. It doesn't provide support for there's going to be this future 3 days of darkness. And neither does the book of Revelation. Also, Revelation, if you interpret it correctly, if we're living in the millennium right now, that means all the stuff before Revelation 20 is most plausibly understood as applying to our past. So like, the first century or the first few Christian centuries. And so it likely applies to our past as well. So we don't have any biblical passages at all that talk about there's going to be a future event in our future where there's going to be 3 days of darkness that cover the earth. So this is an idea that doesn't come from the Bible. It comes from alleged private revelations.
Is that also the case with the thing that is often associated with that is the illumination of conscience, which I understand to be people will see their own soul as God sees it?
Yes, that also is something. There is nothing in the Bible saying that we're going to have an illumination of conscience at some future moment, everyone in the world all at once. This event is also sometimes called the warning. That is not derived from biblical revelation. It is something that is based on alleged private revelations. There is an episode, and I'll just give you the episode number up front before I summarize, but there is an episode of Jimmy Akin's Mysterious World where I looked at the warning or the illumination of conscience event, and it's episode 122. And I've also written an article about the 3 days of darkness, which is at Catholic.com. So if you Google 3 days of darkness, Jimmy Akin, it'll come up. And what you'll see in both the episode on the warning and the 3 days of darkness article is I do what most supporters of these events never do. I go back and I look at the sources that are being cited. One of the things that you find when you study events in this kind of area is that the web pages or books that talk about them are terribly sourced. There is a kind of copy and paste-itis where someone will find a quote in, let's say it's a book, and they'll just copy it and paste it onto their website, and there's no source. And so when you try to investigate, like, okay, so if this is based on private revelation, who said it? What private revelations? I want to read what the seers wrote. And you find that that the sourcing is terrible. And frequently, even when there is a source, it's very, very dubious. Oftentimes, they will misinterpret stuff. For example, when it comes to the illumination of conscience, one of the things you'll hear is, oh, Saint Edmund Campion supported this. And sometimes they'll even have a little quote from Saint Edmund Campion. But when you go and you look it up, you find out this Saint Edmund Campion was not talking about an event in the future where everyone's conscience is going to be illuminated together prior to the last day, which is what the illumination of conscience is supposed to be. It's like before the second coming, before the end of the world, God's going to give everyone this warning by letting them see themselves in the light of their sins and God's mercy. But this is before the second coming. That's why it's a warning. It's not the final judgment. But when you look up the quote from St. Edmund Campion, he was a Jesuit at the time of the Protestant Reformation in England, and he was an underground priest. It was illegal to be a Catholic priest, and if they caught you, they would kill you, which is what happened to St. Edmund Campion. They caught him, and then they killed him.
Mm-hmm.
And this quote actually comes from his trial, where he was accused of saying there's going to be this great day when the King of Spain is going to march in and smash all these evil Protestants in England. And he's like, no, that's not what I've said. The only great day I've promised doesn't involve any earthly potentate like the King of Spain. I'm talking about Judgment Day, just like every Protestant preacher doth. And so there is going to be a reckoning day coming, but it's going to be when Jesus judges our own hearts on Judgment Day. And that's what St. Edmund Campion is talking about. But because people in the apparition rumor net don't look up sources, they just, that's a juicy quote, let's go with that. They end up misrepresenting, even when there is a quote, they end up misrepresenting what was said. Similarly, there are other problems with the sources, like for both the Warning and the 3 Days of Darkness, one of the figures that gets cited is Blessed Anna Maria Taigi, depending on how you want to pronounce her last name. And she was an Italian mystic a while back, not in like the 17th and 18th century, as I recall. Maybe 19th, but her alleged quotations are things that on these subjects are not things that she can be documented to have said in her life. Instead, what they are is quotations attributed to her spiritual director, who didn't even talk about these things until 25 years after she's dead. So we're dealing with an elderly spiritual director and relying on his memory and his honesty about what she said much earlier. We have no way of knowing exactly what she said. We don't have an exact quotation. It's just, I think she said something like this. And yet it gets presented as Blessed Anna Maria Taigi said this. There also are quotations that are entirely fake. A famous one was attributed to Padre Pio, and even when he was alive, and his own order has said no, he never said anything like that. But this quotation from him is still out there on the apparition rumor net, as Padre Pio said this. And so, bottom line, none of these are approved private revelations. In some cases, they're attributed to people who are saints and blesseds, but none of these statements are part of a private revelation that has been investigated and approved as supernatural. Many of them are misunderstood. They're talking about something else, like with St. Edmund Campion, he was talking about Judgment Day. Others are total frauds, like the one attributed to Padre Pio, and others are unknowable because they're not traceable directly to the seer. We just have a claim that somebody remembers the person saying something like this more than 25 years ago. And so I just urge caution on both of these things. They are not in the Bible, and the sources for them are really, really sketchy.